Hello, Shalom Ola, and welcome to the Spiritual Life with international mystic psychic medium Travis Tidwell, me. And I welcome you to this podcast, sponsored by Sacred Dragon, created by Yahweh, my executive producer, who's a priestess in Sacred Dragon, who's third level Reiki master healer, the one and only Athena. And I thank her for assisting me in producing this podcast, making this happen. In this podcast, this episode's about how to clear your crystal and how to make a crystal grid. And if you followed my last episode on how to pick a crystal, and if you followed the first episode, and through some of them where I've talked about designating one crystal for your spiritual growth. You know, when you go somewhere to meditate, you bring that crystal. When you read a book, you break out that crystal. When you do something with spirit, you want to break out that and keep as much energy as you can on it and let it grow with you. That'll be a great facilitator for you. So in the last episode, we talked about picking stones and colors, and this episode, we're talking about how to clear the crystal. Now, a lot of times, just to clear it real quickly, if you don't have flowing water there from the sink or ocean or river, you can blow it off with your breath. Visualize your breath to be a nice flame and blow the crystal off and clear it. You can do it that way. You can sage a crystal. And sometimes if you can't get sage or you get a smudge stick, that would do the same thing. You can put a crystal in the freezer, wrap it up and put it in the freezer for a few weeks. That will clear it. You can take dragon's blood and put it on the crystal, and that's going to clear it. You can take the crystal and bury it in the ground, and that's going to clear it. But eventually the crystal needs to be cleared and cleaned if you're going to program it for something specific. Or if somebody's touched the crystal with negative energy, or you've experienced negative energy while you've been wearing a crystal or something of that nature, you're going to want to clear it. Same thing as charging it, clearing and charging. In the last episode, I talked about charging the crystal. You can, put it in the sun all day. That's one way to recharge your crystal. Or again, you can put it in the freezer to recharge it also, as well as clear it. You can use rock salt. You can go to the ocean. It's great for clearing things. All crystals you can take to the ocean and clear it, and it does that immediately. And that's another way. Also, kunzite is a good clearer for stones. Is it kunzite? I believe it is. I know celestite is. And there's other stones out there. As soon as they're touched by any stone, they're cleared. Now, also, we're talking about making crystal grids tonight on this episode. And there's different reasons for different grids, whether it's healing, protection, manifesting money, or love for yourself. My favorite crystal grid, there's two different crystal grids I use. One is the pyramid crystal grid. And it's exactly just putting three crystals in a pyramid formation and then adding a message in the center of that formation on parchment or paper, and then putting another crystal on top of that to help manifest your will. My second design would be a 5-pointed star, each point with a crystal on it. It would be the right lower point, which would be the manifestation center for the crystal. Possibly you could put a message under that specific crystal for yourself if you wanted. Or at some point, you could also put your message in the center of that crystal with another crystal on it. Now, know this, when you make a grid, then at that point you really do have to meditate. If you went to the last episode, your right hand's projective, you'll project that crystal with whatever intention you have. Like this crystal's for this pyramid grid that I'm building now to manifest my will. You would put that in each crystal that you touched for that grid, and you would have no other thought, because it's going to take that kind of focus and concentration to project and program a crystal, as well as move energy. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about moving energy. The spiritual life's about changing your destiny. I'm about changing your destiny. Sacred Dragon's about changing your destiny. Because I'm also using this podcast as a platform for my Sacred Dragon philosophy. And that's why we're all about that spiritual life and that West Coast magic. Now, you can go to my Instagram. I'm a public figure there. One Sacred Dragon. You can find me under, or Travis Tidwell. I'm sure you can find me under that. You can see some of my postings and some of my altars that I work with, and the magic I work with for people in ritual. I do name charts. I do everything under the sun to help you change and control your destiny. Now, crystals are alive and well. Most people don't have that knowledge about crystals. They haven't spent that much time with crystals, but there's a reason why you have them. And there's a reason why you want them. Because your higher self wants that energy. Your lower self wants to drink, watch TV, have a good time. You're in your emotional body about 90% of your day. The higher self wants meditation. It wants good reading material, a good substance for itself, something that's going to help nourish it. And once you really start balancing your higher self and your lower self, and you've done it as many years as I've been doing it, it becomes very natural to have your own balance. And that's the other things these crystals are going to do. These crystals we're talking about in this podcast really validate, if you go back to the Old Testament, which is the book that we've been raised on, the Adam and Eve consciousness, we know that, they've been using crystals from the beginning of time. Crystals are here to help create a balance for us and work with us. We know that we're created from dirt. Excuse me, as it says in Genesis, through words God created flesh. Through a frequency of sound, the dirt moved. The earth created mother got involved, and because it takes father and mother to procreate, so they got involved and they created the physical shell, and then the frequency brought in the spiritual body, and boom, we're human. And that also tells us that there's a different stone that represents every inside organ of our body. And that's the beauty of metaphysics and crystals. No matter what country you go to, that crystal has the same virtue and property of what is in any other country. That rose quartz represents love here as it does in Africa, or Venezuela, or Puerto Rico, or Egypt. That rose quartz crystal has the same virtues and properties. Same thing as an amethyst. You could get a chevron amethyst from Africa. You could get you get an amethyst, a Veracruz amethyst from Mexico, a Veracruz amethyst. At that point, they both have the same virtues and properties. And no matter what shaman you talk to, whether it's the Amazon jungle, Peru, that stone is going to have the same value and virtue. And that's what should be connecting us universally, are these crystals and stones from our heavenly source, Yahweh, and our divine source, Mother here. These stones are here for us to work with. They represent every inside organ of our body. And that's, basically what happens here. We're created from earth, Our spiritual body lives forever, but our physical body does decompose down to Mother. She's not like styrofoam. Our physical, she regenerates, goes right back down and decomposes. If you have any questions about anything I've shared on this podcast, you can go to TravisTidwellPodcast@gmail.com and ask me a question. I'll answer it for you. I normally charge people for that. I do this for a living. I'm a psychic medium for a living. Also, I'd like for everybody to know who their assigned angel is. So give me an email. I'll tell you who your assigned angel is. I'll do it on the podcast for you. I'm always promoting my album, Time Has Come, by Travis Tidwell, Spotify, iTunes. I'm also wanting to give a thanks to everybody who's made this podcast available for me. This is something I'm here to share to empower you. The spiritual life is here to empower you. So I'm hoping today this information I've shared with you, you can put in your spiritual routine. If you've been following my episodes and start building that energy in your life to help change your destiny. You can go to YouTube, Travis Tidwell Podcast, and you can actually see the podcast that we've recorded this time for you here on episode number 10. And I want to thank my executive producer, Athena, for being here to produce this episode for me, as always, with Sacred Dragon and the power of Yahweh before she falls asleep on me here. And I want to thank my co-producers out here, Nani and Miley, who helped get the energy going here tonight for us and that flow we were looking for. And And you could be assured that they're coming out with their own podcast this year called, what was it again? No, I'm just kidding. Moving right along, I want to wish everybody out there peace and love. God bless you, your family, your loved ones, your pets, your friends, and many blessings, and hopefully peace and love for planet Earth in 2020. Many blessings.
Time has come for a change.